Yes. Yes. We had a great, for those of you who are at it, we had a great creative workshop at 1:30, and where Dave Willis talked about all of the creative aspects of starting with an idea, working up to a script, getting up and developing the voice and the stage play, all the way to the finished product, and showed a lot of clips. The center will be cutting that, and it'll be up online for you in about a week. So I know it was a packed, small room. Those of you who didn't get a chance to see it will be able to go online on Loyola's site and see that piece. In the meantime, since you hadn't met him, Dave Willis, you can sit down if you want, Bill. Sit down. Dave started actually in the cartoon animation business in about 1995. When he was 25 years old. By the time he got 30, he had his own series. He's had a lot of huge breaks, but done a lot just by being persistent, knowing the business, making a lot of mistakes, and knowing how to turn those into really funny and great cartoons like Aqua Teen Hunger Force, the Squidbillies, quite a few others. And they were actually here in town with a live road show in the spring at the House of Blues, knocked them dead. They've sold, they're now on season 7 of Aqua Teen, or maybe season 8, and season 5 on DVD of Squidbillies, sold over 1 million units already. This is only in these last 10 years they've had it going. So he's a hugely successful guy, and what we're going to do tonight is concentrate on career. How did you get started? Where all the little pieces come together to make it work? And first thing up, we're gonna just introduce. Here's Dave Willis. Dave, come on up.
All right, I love that announcement stage. That's great. I went to college up in North Carolina at Wake Forest, and the announcements would have been more like, yes, my dad owns a Lamborghini Diablo. That's all I have to say. So that was really cool, really inspiring to hear about all these different people with their different projects and their bands, and that's amazing. It's really, really exciting. All right.
Well, when was the, I know it's been a long trail, but I mean, thinking all the way back to babyhood, when was the first little bitty thing that came into your life that might have ended up being a piece of what your career is now?
Well, I grew up in the 80s, so you guys have all this amazing technology. I mean, these like HD flip cams and cheap Final Cut Pro and iMovie and all these, you know, everything that you would need really to make a movie that could air in a theater. You know, when I was a kid, we had these VHS cameras that were enormous, and I just used to make movies all the time, and I would have to recruit all the kids in the neighborhood to play the parts, and I would have to do the special effects. There was one time where I was shooting a scene and Zeus was supposed to be hurling thunderbolts, and I was filming it, and I was also had a Lysol can while my eye was in the eyepiece, a Lysol can, and I was lighting it with a barbecue punk, and so flames entered the lens, and it was an awesome effect, and then I pulled back and the camera was completely melting and on fire. Fortunately, they were upgrading at that point to high 8, I guess.
And when this was like in high school?
Yes, this was in high school, and so yeah, and that was the other thing. It was an instant A. You make a movie, it's an A. So, so that was my incentive.
And you were editing these too? How were you editing in those days?
Editing in the camera, shooting as you did it, yeah. But I tried to do like stop action, like if you've ever watched Robot Chicken, I mean that's stop action animation of just clay pieces where they just shoot something, they move it just a fraction of an inch and shoot another frame of it. And I would try to do that with VHS, which of course you can't do. So I would, you know, spend about a year figuring out how to fail with that.
And then we talk sometimes about, some people say, oh, can you be a liberal, wild university? You're going to a Jesuit school. And yet we've seen some of the pieces that you made. And you went to a very, what would be considered a pretty conservative school too, Wake Forest, right? The Demon Deacons, right?
Yeah, it wasn't, I don't know, it's affiliated with the church the same way Loyola seems to be, which is, there's a church out front, I guess. I can't tell. I mean, no one's asked me to witness yet. but there's a lot of church money. But yeah, it was a very conservative school, and it didn't really have, I mean, if this is arts and film and music industry, I mean, we didn't have that in my school. And in fact, I was a political science major, so, and of course, each and every day I use some of those skills. No, I don't. None of them.
So, but you were like a DJ while you were in university, right?
I ran the yeah, I was station manager my senior year of the radio station, which was cable FM. So for those of you familiar with the technology, no one else is familiar with the technology. So
it goes straight to the dorm and that's it.
Yes, where people choose not to listen to it there. So
okay.
Yes, but it was great. It was a great experience, just learning how to, you know, how to be a DJ, and just learning how to fail on a microphone, and just how to pretend to do what, you know, what people do every day. So
what was, a lot of our people are thinking about this coming May and getting out into the real world. What happened to you when you passed through getting that diploma in your hand?
I took about 2 years off. And I would urge anyone to do that. I know that's probably, that's not what maybe some people would want me to say, but certainly some parents who shelled out a lot of money for a college education. I took 2 years off and just did odd jobs. I was telling Jim in 92, Christmas of 92, I was working on a towboat on the Mississippi River just outside of New Orleans, thinking I am not cut out to work on a towboat. But that was good, because that was me sort of feeling out the world and seeing what that was like. And after 2 years, I took stock and I looked back on who I was as a kid and the things I did over summers. I used to work on film crews for free. I would just do it just because I was always interested. You know, I grew up in Atlanta. Turner started there, but CNN started when I was 10 years old in Atlanta. And I just always found it fascinating that there was this sort of bizarre, burgeoning TV empire, and it was right in our backyard. You know, and the Braves were a great team in 1982, and one of the big stories were there were fans in Alaska, and there were fans in Montana, and there were fans all over the world because of the satellite. And that just fascinated me that was coming out of my hometown. And so I look back on those commercials and those corporate videos that I worked on as a PA, just dragging C-stands to the set. And I thought, why am I not trying to do this for a living? This is, you know, and why, you know, I didn't know what I wanted with political science. I really didn't know what I wanted when I was your age, you know. But then I look back on it, and it makes perfect sense now. Because, yeah, because I always wrote and I always worked on this stuff creatively. And I think at the time, maybe I thought it was a little bit beyond my reach. Like I just didn't know if I was able to do that kind of stuff for a living.
So what was the first, I'm sure smallest break, the first break to actually get into the industry, rather than donating your time?
Well, there was a lot of donating of my time. I probably worked on 50 different shoots, either music videos. There were a lot of hip-hop videos that we were shooting in Atlanta in the early 90s. Corporate videos, commercials, and I'd work for free, and generally that would turn into another day paid. And I was just sort of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I wasn't sure. I thought maybe I'd like to be a cameraman, and then I saw guys like just walking like this after carrying 80 pounds of batteries, and I was thinking, oh man, I don't know if I can do that. There was tons of different jobs in this industry. It's just a matter of trying to figure out exactly what it is. I worked on a Cartoon Network shoot, and let me backtrack. I worked on a shoot for Six Flags, which is an amusement park, and they had a roller coaster called the Viper, and I was put under there with a smoke machine for 12 hours, unpaid, with a smoke machine and a walkie-talkie. And they just click on, they go, you know, Cobra to Walkie 1, smoke them up. You know, and it was, so I was just under there just working a smoke machine, and I looked over and I could see like 8 other people that were about my age under a tent watching video playback, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, why am I not eating the bagel watching the video playback? So I was trying to figure out, like, how am I going to get in on the creative end of this? And at Cartoon Network, I worked on a shoot. I got the name of someone, and it was finally one of those things where it's timing. They had to hire a PA. I submitted a writing sample, but I also submitted a letter of recommendation from an 8-year-old that I wrote, and I had him rewrite. The dirty little secret is actually he's a mentally challenged 13-year-old, but I had him write it with a crayon. But I got hired on that, and
I got to get those crayons, man.
yeah. It said, I am Scott. My name is Scott. I am 8. David Willis exhibits a professionalism which I find profound in this day and age. And I had a drawing of a car.
So you're in the door as a PA. What's the next move toward actually getting something real to do?
I was very fortunate. I got hired by a guy, Andy Merrill, who was the voice of Brack, and he was one of the guys who created a show called Space Ghost Coast to Coast. And yeah, Andy's a super talent.
A lot of you guys have actually heard of this?
And Andy was great, and I got hired for $250 a week. So that was enough to cover my gas and my lunch and staying at home with mom and dad for a little bit, you know. And it was sort of like, we dare you to work here, you know. And Andy was great, and right off the bat, you know, I would write stuff, and Andy would give me notes or throw stuff away, or you know, let me do things right off the bat, and then it was great. I mean, not everyone is like that. Some people are maybe more protective of their job or feel threatened by that, but I've always found that if you open the door for somebody, they'll let them go as far as they can go with it, you know, and help them grow, and you know, it comes back tenfold. And Andy was like that with me, and I was very appreciative of it, because he just allowed me to write right off the bat.
So from when you got in the door as a PA, just a basic level PA, to when your first words actually hit a script or hit a screen, how long a period was that?
Probably about 6 months.
That quickly?
But I was working on a show that was called Cartoon Planet, which was a spin-off of Coast to Coast. And Cartoon Planet were minute-long pieces. So there was no arc, there was no story, there was really, and some of them were just Dada, just crazy little scene. I mean, there was one that was, Space Ghost was just, it was like, it was sort of almost a kid's show. The line was, there's a noodle in my doodle, and his name is Minky Boodle. I mean, that was the script, you know. So it's not really, not really a feat. But then I moved from there to Space Ghost, and I would write scripts on the weekend and submit them, and you know, and sometimes they'd strike a chord and get completely rewritten. Sometimes they would be completely shredded, you know, and totally goodbye weekend, you know, thrown away. But after a while, you know, you get better at it, and you start to learn what people are looking for, and it tends to hone your style too, you know. And so probably about another year after that before I got like a script produced.
A real writing credit.
Yeah. So about a year and a half there.
And then did you fit into a regular rotation? What happened?
We were a low budget show, and we always needed scripts, and I was always the one willing to just crank them out. And you know, and it was a small group of writers, and we would, you know, that's all we would do all day long. We just beat each other up, and whoever submitted the script got the writing credit, but you know, we all wrote pretty much equally on the shows, and rewrote and rewrote and rewrote, and so it's hard to say. It's like I probably wrote or co-wrote on 80 some odd episodes at some point. But the thing that's instructive to me, and I hope would be instructive to you, is when I got hired there, I saw that show, and there's 14 episodes of it that existed, and I thought it was so funny, and I couldn't believe my luck that I gotten hired at a place that was making this in Atlanta, you know, not in LA. I didn't have to move to LA, because if I'd have moved to LA, it would have probably just shattered my spirit. I don't know if I could have done it. You know, I would have, you got to get an agent, all these other, it's such a difficult grind. It was much easier for me to get into the door in Atlanta. And with Space Ghost, when I saw those episodes, I thought, you know, I just don't think I could write this. I don't think I would be good enough, or I'm just not sure I'm funny enough, and that maybe still remains to be seen, but at least I feel like I grew as a writer by not only the feedback I got, but the work that I did with others, and just putting in the sweat equity, just putting in the time, trying to learn my craft. And I gotta say, you know, after a few years, you know, I could see like strides in my own career and my own life in my 20s, and so I think it's, you know, I look at some people, I work with, and just the way that they've grown as writers and as artists. It's just, you should have the highest of ambitions, because in this world you really can. I mean, I know that sounds like a friggin' load of bull, but I mean, it sounds like a speech at graduation, but there are really no limits. I mean, you know, you should have the highest ambition, and then, you know.
So from a forged crayon message from an 8-year-old, all of a sudden, 5 years later, you have 88 episodes of Space Ghost under your belt. You're already kind of settled in, and you are at that point an employee of Turner? Or?
Yes, I was an employee of Turner, and I worked on Space Ghost with Matt Malero and some other writers pretty much until 2000, when we finally just said, we are burned out on this. We cannot do any more with this character.
Tell them about the final episode that led to the guys.
Well, we finally wrote an episode that had the Aqua Teen Hunger Force in it, because Space Ghost had bought hundreds of dollars worth of hamburgers so that he could build a fort out of them. And then he couldn't afford to pay for them because he didn't know what money was. So the owner of the restaurant, Burger Trench, had worked out a deal with him where they would have this conspicuous product placement of the Aqua Teen Hunger Force, which were just fast food mascots for his fast food chain, and they would take over his show. So Space Ghost, an episode of Space Ghost Coast to Coast, had all of like one line from Space Ghost, which is, "What are you doing here?" And then Aqua Teens just take over. And our bosses really didn't like the episode because it didn't have any Space Ghost in it, but we loved it and loved the characters, and we thought, well, if we can't make this, well, these characters can stand on their own as a show, and that's how that idea as a show came about.
How were you able to convince, I mean, you'd had a track record at Space Ghost. How were you able to convince, as these guys who had just come in from scratch and started doing this, convince them to give you the money to do a pilot for Aqua Teen, which seems totally off the wall, different from Space Ghost?
I would say rule number one: do not do any drawings on cocktail napkins, or do not show them to people on cocktail napkins, because that does not lend an air of professionalism to anything. No, we didn't. I didn't do them on cocktail napkins. I did do them on typing paper with my little ballpoint pen, which is just terrible. We came in there with the drawings, and we explained the idea, and I remember the moment when four faces all sort of looked down to their BlackBerries at the same time, which was basically to say, I'm no longer interested in what you are saying to me. So, but it was fortunate. They were our bosses, and we'd worked with them for years, and I think they liked what we did and respected us, and figured, why not give them a shot, since we're building this block of cartoons, you know, why not? And so they took a big bet on us by giving us the money to make it, And
About how much money would you be talking about that's not giving away things for a pilot?
it might have cost us a couple $100,000, but in the end, the animation that we still use today was used on that pilot, so the money's come back to them in a big way. But I mean, unlike Family Guy or Simpsons or any other real, actual animated show, we recycle all the original animation from 2000 is still being used in 2010. So it's like the car got paid off many years ago.
So they aired it. I understand the first one was like aired in the middle of the night or something. Did you get how did you get approval to go ahead with the series?
It was a budget thing. It had to air before the end of the year.
Ah.
So it aired, unannounced in the
December
middle of the
the
night.
30th in the middle of the night.
Yep. And this December the 30th will be 10 years.
So then, how did they make the decision whether or not to go ahead and give you real money to start doing it as a regular thing?
This is something else not to do, although I'm now very glad that we did it. We started making episode 2 before we were finished with episode 1, which was probably should have gotten us fired, but in retrospect worked out good. But at the time, we were thinking, well, as soon as they said yes, and it was a very tentative yes, we started spending money because we were thinking if they change their mind in 48 hours, then they'll at least have a $60,000 animation bill that they have to look at and go, you know what, we made, they were on record as saying yes, so we were like, we started spending money immediately. But we started making episode 2 because we had faith in it. And in those early days, most especially, Family Guy was carrying the load for the block. I mean, the Family Guy had just awesome ratings. It still does, but it really paid our salary, while we were trying to figure this show out. That show is, raking it in. So.
And that was bought from Fox.
So in a way, you'd thank Seth MacFarlane, because we probably, if that show wasn't on our air, we'd have probably been on a very short leash.
But as it turns out, 10 years later, you've sold millions of DVDs, and people actually watch what you do, and you've been given pretty much a free rein at creating new stuff.
Yeah, they've given us pretty much free rein. There's not a whole lot of they let us do essentially what we want to do, and you can't. I mean, that's invaluable. I know plenty of people that work out in LA and work on other shows, and there's so many checklists. There's so many network notes, and for better or worse, when someone doesn't like our show, I can't blame it on anyone but ourselves, and I wouldn't have it any other way. But that's incredible. That's an incredible level of freedom in this industry. That I don't know that we earned it, but we have it. So.
And after only 5 years, you've got a second show that's now been going on for 5 years, the Squidbillies.
Squidbillies is a little bit different. Yeah. Squidbillies is actually interesting because now I didn't create Squidbillies. Squidbillies was a funny title. Honestly, our boss came in one day and said Squidbillies, and we were like, that'd be a funny show. And then he's like, make it. And there were 6 of us, all 6 of us, in a room with tons of resources and tons of time, focused on that show. And there was not one person with a very clear agenda of what that show should be. And it became push and pull and tension and about a year of just failed concepts. And now, granted, this wasn't a black hole. I mean, we were still making Aqua Teen at the time. It was just like we were all moonlighting on this job, and this job wasn't working for anybody. And at a certain point, everybody started running away from it like it was roadkill. It was like everyone couldn't get far enough away from the failure. And I think at the last minute, we thought we had great designs and great voices and some great music. And a friend of mine that was the executive producer of the show at the time, Jim Fortier, and we had gone to high school together in Conyers, Georgia. So we were thinking, let's sort of work back from who we were in high school and those redneck stories and those hicks that we knew, and not that we were that much further up the food chain than the hicks we're referring to, but let's sort of rework that as Squidbillies. So it was just two of us, and that's how we sort of pulled that show out of the muck of what it was and what it wasn't, and gave it a little bit more of an identity and made it our
How
own
long
show.
did it take? Over a year to get to the point where
It
you
took a year, but it was everybody sort of doing it part-time as their second job. It was like everybody's hobby.
Mm-hmm.
But so it wasn't full concentrated effort, but everybody had a different opinion, and 6 people, and there just wasn't one person that was the arbiter telling us. And when everyone ran away from it and it was just Jim and myself, then I think, for better or worse, we could make it our own, and no one was invested in it, so we could do whatever we wanted with it.
So from the first day that your boss came in and said the word Squidbillies to the airing of the first episode, how long was that?
Probably a year and a half.
It took that long to get, and then all of a sudden was it?
But it was a lot of false starts.
Oh yeah.
I mean, a ton of false starts. I mean, 2 complete rewrites that were 2 complete versions of scripts that went all the way to the finished animation stage, and then it was just decided, this is garbage, throw this away, make sure magnets are run over this tape so no one can ever see it.
That heavily.
Yes,
How-
that was the hate. Yeah.
After the first episode, I'm just trying to get the chronology of something that turns into such a success. After that first one aired, how long was it before you knew you actually had something again? You had a hit.
We went through, like archaeologists, through all of our old scripts, and for the first 6 episodes, we dug out old scripts that I always thought this was funny. Let's put this back in now that no one cares,
Yeah.
So it was really a matter of just someone running it, and we just decided to run it our own way once everyone else had run away from it, essentially.
And
So,
then people started watching.
yeah. But and I would argue too that if any 2 people in that room, we had a lot of talented people, would have taken it, it would have been a different show, but it would have been a funny show. It was just the way the system was set up to fail.
Yeah.
6 people, and it just didn't have one person that was just driving it. You need somebody to kind of drive it. And with Aqua Teen, Matt and I both knew exactly what we wanted, so there was no debate.
Yeah.
No confusion.
So these are 2 really different looking shows, really 2 different theme shows. Is there a different demographic for each of these 2? Is there a different age, sex, group, or whatever that you're aiming at with each of these shows?
Only the highest intellect, the most intelligent 2% of the population.
No, Dave.
Really, what it's aimed like a laser at them. No, wait. If you're up after midnight.
Yeah, I mean, we'll take you.
I mean, I got to the point, it's like I'm a dad now, and I meet these other dads, and they have their kids in my kids' class, and they have these different, they work at a bank or whatever, and I just get to the point where I just say, I work at Turner. It's okay. If you have a DVR, you can record it or whatever. I kind of don't want them to know what I do.
But when you were doing your shows, were they the 18 to 34? I remember you saying in one of the interviews you came to New Orleans and there was like a 50-year-old couple in the middle just screaming and howling into it. But are they kind of out of the mainstream of the people who really watch what you do?
I don't know. They talk about our viewers, and not just our shows, but Adult Swim shows are more 18 to 34-year-old males are sort of the key demographic. And it's a much sought-after demographic because it's thought that, you have tons of disposable income and you like to buy crap and we sell crap. But it's like, we have a lot younger kids obviously watching, but that, it never enters the equation when we're talking. We just try to make ourselves laugh and try to make something that we would like to watch. And of course now I'm out of the demographic, but it doesn't.
Now you're older than you're supposed to be writing to.
That's right, I guess. And at some point I'm going to be asking my kid, what do rappers say now? What's the word that they say when they're enjoying a party?
Oh God. So
It's been really an education listening to all this. Those of you who watch Aqua Teen know one of the main characters is Meatwad, and this is Meatwad, by the way. And I thought it was in our creative class today. I listened to the show, watched the show, and I always thought the voice was put through a filter. And I find out today that
No, Jim. It is not put through a filter.
and tell them where the voice came from, please.
I used to do the Meatwad voice whenever I see a little cute little baby or a kitten.
So you talk.
And I say, hey, little baby. Hey there, little kitty.
Sorry, when you did that today, I lost it. I didn't have any idea. I didn't have any idea. So you had did you have all three of the main characters when you came out of the Space Ghost and brought them into this?
We had Shake, just complete, just world's biggest asshole. That was our approach there. Meatwad, Mind of a Child, and just completely shat upon. And then Frylock. Frylock we thought was a wizard, and he's just sort of shifted to a scientist over time. But the only reason Frylock floats is because we couldn't afford to animate him walking. So it was the same with Meatwad. It's like Meatwad was supposed to be a shapeshifter, and we could only afford to get the igloo and the hot dog. So we thought, well, we'll just keep that. That fits his mind. He could shift shapes into anything, but for some reason he would just always go to igloo or hot dog because he can't think of anything better.
I remember we were talking about marketing, so we're talking demographics, who it's going to go to, but I liked that in one episode they were talking about, okay, you can market products online, you can sell yourself by placing this or product or that product, and you guys went ahead and took it to the ultimate limit in one episode.
We did, well, I think it was just one of those things. I think every show has probably done that sort of jaded sellout episode where, you have to cater to a product or ad sales. And I always sort of thought, this is how the business works. It's advertising. Advertising pays for these shows, and now with DVRs, you fast forward through the ads, and they've got to figure out a way to pay for the shows. So we thought, well, why don't we just have it's very consistent that Shake would sell out his own show, to the highest bidder, and then we thought the only way it worked is if we actually did it with a real product, and as long as we didn't have to get too much client approval, we were fine. So we did that Boost Mobile episode, and so the whole episode, Shake is just clearly shilling for Boost Mobile, but it's a terrible episode, but but the company got like a bunch of money from Boost Mobile, and we got some little decorative shampoo kits from them. But if you think back on it, and my boss at Adult Swim had a point about it. Is he said, look at soccer games. They keep the action going because they have ads on banners throughout. And you look at the early days of television, like Steve Allen, even on the Tonight Show, was like Chesterfield cigarettes. He'd smoke a cigarette and say, this is Chesterfield, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't that well?
A brand that went away.
So it was almost like, 50 years later, back when we didn't know if we were going to make the show or not, or get to make the show, I would have gladly slapped Powerade all over Shake's cup if it would have made the difference between us getting to make the show and not getting to make the show. And I tend to sort of feel like this is unpopular, but I think some bands nowadays are not as precious about their songs because they realize that the music industry has changed so much that sometimes the best way to get their song out there is an ad unfortunately in some ways. But some artists, that's how they get exposed. And I always thought, like someone like Neil Young or Tom Waits, it would have been so cool if they would have said, no, you know what, I'm not going to sell you Old 55, but I'm going to write you an original. Like Tom Waits writing an original like song for Gillette, you know? I mean, wouldn't that be the best a man can get? I mean, wouldn't that, you know, I mean, wouldn't that be, that'd blow, you'd blow your mind, it would blow your mind. I would actually have some weird sort of new, not that I don't already have incredible respect for him, but whatever.
So I
Side
know
note.
you're a frustrated musician, and that your partner in Aqua Teen, Matt, is a screaming heavy metal guitarist. Tell us how that translated, and since you got a room full of musicians here too, tell us how that translated into part of what you do. I mean, you're a writer, and then you start getting the vision for things. You have all these other talents and things. All of a sudden, you exploit every bit of talent you've got. How did music come into it?
Well, I'm a music lover, obviously, but I would. It's a good way to get to go on tour is to create a cartoon show and then use all those resources to just basically fake people into letting you perform.
So playing at the House of Blues. This is how you actually do it.
We did a tour. We did a with puppets. Probably I didn't see any of you there, unfortunately. But you were there? What'd you? Yeah? Can I do? I want to do that Carl thing. Can I do the Carl thing? Who that? Get with me, come on. Who that? Who that? Who that there gonna beat them Saints there? The New York Giants gonna beat them Saints there. Yeah, I got a worse reaction there about it.
There was part of an interview online where you said people tried to shred your puppet after it.
People almost ripped it off my hand in Madison. So
Can't do
I
this.
said some negative things about cheese.
Negative cheese.
negative things.
But
about-
on Squidbillies, all of a sudden, you actually began writing music and performing music. Is that correct?
Yeah, frustrated is generous. I'm a hack musician, really. I mean, I'm just sort of wanted to be a songwriter, and I think I figured out that this is a better outlet for something that doesn't require rhythm right on the spot is a better outlet for my creative endeavors. But Matt Malero is much more of an actual musician, but we've used the cartoon to sort of cozy up to musicians that we've always wanted to meet or work with, and there's a mutual admiration and respect there that's interesting in the comedy world and in music in a way that it's almost like actors are way over here. Like even with Space Ghost, you could get any musician you wanted. They all wanted to do the show. The actors, you couldn't get within a 10-foot radius of them, but musicians are generally game for anything, and especially with stuff like this, it's perfect to their talents. I mean, some of the best voiceover actors we've had have been rappers like Doom and T-Pain, and because it's just very natural to them, to do a character on the mic.
I forgot to tell. By the way, I don't know if you noticed the voice of the devil, Satan, or whatever in the hell and the thing that was playing when you came in here. The voice of the devil was actually Chef Jr. That was Isaac Hayes.
Isaac Hayes III. There's a lot of I mean, he's just a local voiceover guy, and just real funny, and didn't have as many political hang-ups as his dad, I guess.
Did, yes.
So, but with musicians, I had Nico Case did a voice for a pilot I did called Cheyenne Cinnamon and the Fantabulous Unicorn of Sugartown Candy Fudge. Take a couple breaths to get that title out. I just thought that seemed like a real specific thing. I mean, it's not specific to Georgia, obviously, but they are a Georgia band, and we knew some of the same people. Like we knew Dave Schools, the bass player, and we did something for him on his New Year's, their New Year's show a couple years ago in Atlanta at Phillips. We just did like a whole 10-minute Auld Lang Syne. Oh, okay, cool. And we just stayed in touch with him, and it just sort of seemed to fit the story perfectly, you know. We just use it as an excuse to get to know bands that we like, you know.
So how did T-Pain fit in?
He's a huge fan. He's a guy, huge Adult Swim fan. He's got like a truck that's got Adult Swim like in metal letters all over it. He's a great guy. He's an awesome guy. I was at his Christmas party. I'm going to pass this iPhone around so everyone can see that I was at his Christmas party.
No, you don't need to.
No, but yeah, strippers dressed like Santa Claus. Insane. But
That's the T-Pain I know.
but he's talented. I mean, he's a talented, funny guy who, you know, just likes cartoons and likes to laugh. And, you know, there's a lot more connection to that world than you would initially think, I guess. So.
You know what I think would be really cool? David's brought a really nifty gift for us, an episode that has not aired yet of Aqua Teen. That's about 80-90% there.
Yeah, there's no sound. It's not sweetened, and I think it's like the first 7 minutes of it.
Yeah, so I figured what we could do. Why don't you intro it, and then I'll put it up on the screen. Tell us what we're getting ready to see.
Okay, it's tentatively called Intervention. Carl is being told by the rest of the Aqua Teens that maybe he needs to take a hard look at his life and make some serious changes. And he's reticent to do that.
There are alcohol breathalyzers involved in this particular show. I've got it in here.
Oh, you do? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And his companion is Meatwad.
Yeah, he's got his car rigged where he has to blow into it to start it. And that's why he starts taking Meatwad to the strip club, because he needs a sober blower.
All right. Guys, I'm not getting it up here. Should I put it in the DVD player rather than in this? Okay. Because it's not coming up here. Except it's locked.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, while we're trying to get this thing up.
Okay, the Moonanites were initially... Does anyone remember a video game? Does anyone remember the Atari 2600? Am I like the only... All right. I still have mine, by the way.
Trying to see if it
but it was
comes
a
up.
game
It's
called
locked.
E.T. Like,
See if
they
it-
struck a huge deal. E.T., whoever made E.T. struck a huge deal with Atari to make millions of these games, and it was not very successful. So millions of these games were destroyed. They were buried in the
Get to
desert,
menu.
blocked in cement, or so the urban legend goes, but I think that's true. Well, originally the Moonanites were supposed to be like some video game from,
Haven't seen this.
like some similar video game, and they were
Oh, there it is, there it is.
and they were ghosts from like some video game that were just. And then we started thinking, we were like, God, what a backstory! It's like you'd have to like put up 3 pages of expository stuff. So we finally said they're just badasses from the moon, you know. And, and you're referring to the Boston, the bomb thing? Yeah. I didn't know anything about that. What happened? I'm kidding. I'm kidding, obviously.
It's all right.
I was questioned twice by the FBI. Some lady apparently got threatened by, I don't know. It was a super weird thing. The media kept calling it a hoax, which implies that someone put that up there and then said it's a bomb, which that's a lie. I mean, look up the word hoax, you know, and Fox News carried it for days. I had no idea those things existed until I heard someone listening to the news, and I heard some anchorman say, a SpongeBob SquarePants-like character has thrust the city of Boston into turmoil. And of course, I was like, wow, you know, I am kind of proud. These are my opinions, by the way, not those of the network, because the network was freaked out, obviously, and you know, that all got settled, but yeah, insane.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
On Day Trotter? Are you a fan? I love Day Trotter. I think that's cool. Wow, a lot of people. All right. We just did that Christmas album, and I don't know. I don't know how that came about. They contacted us, and I just loved the site. I just thought it was really cool, and you know, that album came. I mean, we just put that album out. It was like 3 weeks is how much time was spent making that album. It was at nights, like, you know, while we were making the show. So I think some of it's really, really funny, and I'm really proud of it. But yeah, I don't know. Day Trotter.
Any
phone
other?
call. Yeah.
Any other?
That was great. I tried to get them to do the Christmas album too, Oh Holy Night. They were busy that day. But no, they were awesome. We wrote the lyrics, and we had one sort of music idea in mind, but they basically came in and took it. Braun, the drummer, can do a bunch of different metal voices, like he did that King Diamond sort of. Yeah. God, I can't even remember the line. And then Brett, the crazy guy, did you bring your babies? Babies don't watch this. Take the seat outside. Leave it in the streets. I have not seen them in a while. They're from Atlanta, but I recently, a couple years ago, I saw Brett driving in the rain. It looked like his car had hit a couple of telephone poles, and he had the window rolled down, and he was just driving with his head out the window.
Much like in this coming episode. Let's take one more question or so, then we'll watch this as the end of the show.
Up there. First words out of our mouth. Very first words out of our mouth. We did not debate it. We were like, Matt said Master Shake. I said Meat Wad. Matt said Frylock. I think I said Aqua Teen Hunger Force, and we were like, great. On that note, I think though this season we're going to start calling it Aqua Unit Patrol Squad, though.
Okay, just so you know, and you are Carl besides Meatwad, is that not correct?
Mm-hmm.
This features Carl very prominently. Let's see what we. Oh, a good one, big dog.